Hello and welcome back to Pride at Work 2021. For our next module, Supports Available, we've invited representatives from Solas and Intreo to talk to you about the training opportunities available for job seekers. We've also invited the one and only Paul Ryder to host this talk, and we're very excited to have him here. Do not forget that you can watch all the modules back in our community center later, but I'll let Paul do the talking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and welcome back to the Pride at Work conference hosted by Dublin Pride, coming to you virtually from your homes or offices or wherever we find you, being ourselves in these crazy times. As Chris said, my name is Paul Ryder, and I'll be your host for this module, which is titled Support Available. The module is described as technological innovations and other predictable and unpredictable drivers of change, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, are constantly reshaping the economy, and with it, the demand on workers and their skills. In this module, I will be joined by representatives from Intreo and Solas to discuss government initiatives for lifelong learning. Together, they will explore the range of training opportunities and supports available and how to access them. And this is interactive. We want to hear from you guys. Please send in your comments, send in your questions. This is the time to really ask the questions and find out the answers that you really want to hear. I'm delighted to be joined by our panel. First up, the Head of Employer Relations of the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection, Siobhán Lawlor. And also, Director of Research for Solas, you've got Shauna Dunlop. So I just want to welcome in the panel there.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much. Guys, I just want to ask you some questions. I just want to get a bit of a basis on your background and your career choices and how you're in the positions that you are today, because both of you obviously hold very high positions and it hasn't just come overnight. Nothing is an overnight success in those industries. So I just want to ask you guys, where did you start? Siobhán, I'm going to start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I suppose if I think back to when I left school, I would never have thought that I would ended up here. I actually did a fairly poor leaving cert, and I went into computer programming on what was one of the first ESF programs, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and I flunked out of it, and I ended up getting a job in the county council. So I was there for a while and didn't really love it, and I moved to the civil service, took a drop in my pay to move to the civil service. But what happened when I came to the civil service, and particularly the Department of Social Protection, is that there was a link between me, my values, the work that I was doing. And so I think that that's how I've developed my career. And I suppose the things that I've learned in terms of my own career development is that you have to invest in your own learning. You have to not stand in your own way, so as that you try to jump some hurdles and address your challenges, and then choose a job that matches your own personal values. And if you do that, well, then I think you can't go wrong.
Thank you so much, Siobhán. And over to you, Shauna.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you all today, and also to share a little bit about my own story. So, as you might hear from my accent, I'm originally from Northern Ireland, and I suppose one of the reasons why I am in the role I'm in is because of how I started out. And actually, my dad, he still actually does a little bit of this. He was the blacksmith in County Armagh, and he's 78 and he still works, although he is very frustrated, as many of us are, in not being able to get out of the house, but he still lights the forge every day when he can. So I grew up in a background of that sort of craft and working for yourself and making education so important. So he always would have had apprentices when I was growing up. So, but I did go the traditional route in many ways and did go to university. But when I left university with a degree in English, because I chose the subject that I love, I found that I couldn't actually really get a job. And I ended up working in a place that would be similar to Intreo, and actually helping people get on to work placements, young people who were on job skills, start apprenticeships. And I think because I started there, no matter where I ended up, I always came back to education, to people who find skills to be the pathways to the life that they really wanted to lead. And so I feel very privileged to be in the role that I am in, particularly because I look after the research and the data, and I'm able to actually help the state, I suppose, through listening to yourselves from what you want, you know, and the skills that you need, to actually make that difference for many people.
So both of you will have both been affected by COVID-19. How has it forced you to adapt to how has COVID forced you to adapt your career to the current climate and what's going on now? I suppose because everybody has been affected, no industry is not affected. Siobhán, how has COVID affected you and made you adapt your career?
I think for us, given the fact that I work in social welfare, Department of Social Protection, and Intro was basically at the front line of all of this. So in terms of adapting my own career, I suppose to some extent I actually stopped doing what I was doing, which was the employer engagement, and it was all focus on job seekers in terms of supporting them, in terms of managing telephones, in terms of opening post, and it was just everybody's shoulder to the grindstone. It was an enormous shock to our system. And I think one of the things that we as a department, we're very, very adaptable, and we respond to external shocks and external opportunities. And so for us, the important thing was to adapt very, very quickly, to continue to be able to meet our primary business imperative, which is actually about paying people. So the training, the education, the referrals to jobs, things like that were very, very secondary in the first stages, because it was simply about paying people. And then what happened was we realized that there was immediate needs within the economy in terms of the hashtag essential workers. So we did a big campaign with the horticulture area in terms of fruit picking, mushroom picking, because normally these people would have come in from abroad, and we had to find groups of people to work from within Ireland, where it would have been not really jobs that Irish people do generally. And so that was a very big campaign. And the other very big campaign that we run, and we're still running it, there's an event on at the moment, is for healthcare workers. So I suppose we had to respond to the immediate need and then reframe our services to meet what were pressing needs, which were in recruitment. So I think in all of that, it was about teamwork, flexibility, huge effort, absolutely huge effort, and the capacity to adapt our processes, our way of approaching things, to do things differently so that we were doing things online. Our services generally had been face-to-face, and we had to switch very, very quickly to kind of a digital engagement, notwithstanding the fact that we recognise that there are loads of people who still need face-to-face and personal service, and we still provide that.
And Siobhán, just to touch base on something you said there with regards to the horticultural campaign you did, you said about how Irish people wouldn't have normally been the ones to do the fruit picking, and that campaign would have been a bit out of touch, I suppose, for a lot of Irish people. Have you seen that a lot in the last kind of couple of months, where people have just completely shifted, changed career? It's something that I do want to touch on it with you a little bit, with both of you a little bit later on. But have you seen a massive shift change of people? Their careers have changed, and are they willing to adapt now, realizing that they might have to change careers in what you see day to day?
Yeah, I think at this stage we're not seeing it to the extent that we might, so that because of the fact that we've had rolling lockdowns, so what is happening is that people are gradually moving to new opportunities, so and potentially moving to part-time opportunities while they're waiting for their own jobs to reopen, because there has been such a lockdown. Like, we have 450,000 people approximately on PUP payments at the moment because of the current lockdown. So what we're trying to do is to encourage people to look at the opportunities that are there, even in terms of online learning or part-time work or casual work and things like that, so that, like, previously, we were working in terms of recruiting security guards because, you know, Lidl and Aldi needed security at that stage because there were such large queues of people queuing up for their toilet roll. So it's always about meeting the need immediately. But I think if I look back to what happened in 2011 and I see and I hear outcomes for people where they completely shifted. So I met one man there recently who was a car salesman. And what happened with him was made unemployed, no cars being bought at the time. And then he went and he did a Fall to Ireland course in culinary skills. He went on and did further education. Again, he went on and did an Erasmus course across Europe. And now he's lecturing in the ETBs himself, talking and supporting job seekers and learners. And so he has completely flipped his career from from a job that was paying his salary to a job that he had an absolute passion for, and then he moves on to pass on his learning, his understanding, and his passion. And those things will happen, and it's just hard at the moment when so much there's just turbulence at the moment.
Yeah. I'll bring you to the same question, which was talking about how COVID has adapted and changed your career, and within your job as Director of Research for Solas, how have you adapted? How have you changed? Like we said there with Siobhán, everybody's changed and everyone is still adapting to what the current climate is. How has it affected you in the last year?
Well, certainly from a personal perspective, like many people who maybe were in an office as I was back in March last year, and we heard the announcement, we went home that evening thinking we might, be working from home for the next 2 weeks. And here we are, like almost a year later. So from a personal perspective, like many of my colleagues, the majority of the colleagues actually who work in what essentially is the organisation that looks after all further education and training, the majority of us have not been back in the office. And with that, came a massive transformation. And like one thing I would say about it was, in many ways, it was amazing how quickly some of the adaptation actually occurred. So we had actually just rolled out Microsoft Teams in the organisation just in the weeks leading up to, what was to come. And so we all had the ability to actually work, on a device from home as it turned out. And in some ways, I think it's important to look at the things that have become possible during the period. And the other thing I would say from a personal perspective is, we do all have time to reflect, and we do all have more time to be at home and not commute and be with family. And in some ways, that's been a real positive. From the organisational perspective, further education and training is something that really does have a huge role to play in face-to-face activity. There's about 50,000 learners every year who, undertake some sort of further education and training in their own communities. And that is, that's a big part. It's a big part of the heart of further education, and that outreach and that link, I think, has been very difficult for people. So that was one of the things that we had to think about when, essentially all of the services had to close. So whereas a lot of the provision we have, such as post-leaving cert, which is open to everyone, that was more easily adapted to go online and is actually still going quite well. Some of the activities which are more towards people who want that face-to-face, who want that actually in a location with an advisor or a tutor, has been much more difficult to support. So from the organisation's perspective, we've done a lot in trying to make sure that we have access to learners, and we've supported the practitioners who are out there in the centres and the providers. From the research perspective, one of the most interesting things, I suppose, that we did during the last year was every year we produce a national skills bulletin. And that has been going on, I think, for maybe 15, 16 years. And normally what we do in that is on a national level, we pick out the occupations where there are skill shortages. Now, because of everything that was happening, that just simply wasn't possible in the last period. So what we did was we continued research we were doing on occupations that were mostly affected potentially by the pandemic, and we looked at that on a regional basis, and we've been using that to kind of shape how we are progressing our research from here on in, and that includes with things like Brexit. So you know, I suppose we adapted to the research that was needed, and maybe the data that we hadn't looked at before that we might need for the future, and very much in partnership with Siobhán and our own department and many other stakeholders. We've all worked towards what initiatives are possible for people, and one of those is a major national initiative called Skills to Compete, which is absolutely there for people who have been affected by the pandemic. So I could keep talking there now, but that maybe gives you a general sense of kind of some of the aspects.
Thank you, Shauna. You're cutting across all my questions there. Thank you so much. I'm only messing. But actually, it's something that you've just touched upon there, and I just want to get a little bit more insight before we see your fantastic presentations. All we have at the moment is the internet to get our information, because like both of you have said, the face-to-face aspect of your services is kind of gone at the moment. And there's so much support available there for people who are searching for employment and education. Has a lot of this information only surfaced in the pandemic online, or have people just not been looking hard enough, or has it not been a need to be looked? So has the information been there, or were we just kind of avoiding it? Siobhán, sorry.
I think the information was already there. To some extent, it is about the fact that we didn't need to look for it before. So if somebody was made recently unemployed, like normally we'd have, you know, I think it's about 190,000 people on job seekers, on job seeker payments. So that's only 190,000 people who need to make claims. But if we look at the number of people who all of a sudden had to make a claim for PUP, and had to go on to My Welfare, and had to try to get had to make sure they had their PPS number, and make sure that they were registered with gov.ie. So there were things that they never had to do before at the volumes that had to be done. So if we look at our website and the hits that we were getting, the numbers just went up phenomenally, like through the roof. And if we look at job seekers as a case in point, before the pandemic, we had about 2% of job seekers were making their claims online. Now I think it's about 53%. If we think about the illness benefit payments, what was happening was that a lot of them were coming in, through the post or whatever. Now, I think it's 83% of them are sent in directly from the doctor. So we have pushed ahead with technology the way we didn't need to before, and we've become very au fait with new terminologies, with new language, with new information that we didn't need before. Like if we think about even the language that we use, you know, in terms of lockdown or PUP or, you know, the OR rate, like these were not relevant to our lifestyles before. But I think the thing is that between social media, between communities, people are very good across communities in terms of sorting each other out and helping each other out. You know, I'd say there's very few communities around here that don't have a WhatsApp group for their road or for their social group or things like that. So we've harnessed technology, and we've harnessed the opportunities that it provides for us to be able to deliver. So one of the things that we do have is, if we look at the department's strategy, was to get to a stage where we anticipated that about 50% of our traffic, our claim processing, would be online by 2023. Now, we have way surpassed that, simply because we had to, and that people knew that it was the quickest way for it to happen. So while there were challenges, definitely there were opportunities, and everybody has harvested those opportunities, while at the same time, if somebody cannot use that, well then the face-to-face, the phone call, those services are still there. Our intro offices, for the most part, are open on still open on reduced hours because of social distancing. Our telephone lines are mad busy. I know the phone calls yesterday, there was over, I think it was about 4,500 phone calls yesterday. Now, that's way in excess. So the service is there, the information was there. It's just that we're all using it more now.
Yeah, even from my own point of view, I've had to make some phone calls to Intro, and like that, before it would have been a more daunting experience to have to make those calls because you were afraid of how long you were going to have to wait, you were afraid you wouldn't get the answer you wanted, and you were also afraid in certain points that the person on the other end of the phone might not be sympathetic to what you're discussing because of what they may have been through in the past. And actually, the couple of calls I've made, they've been both receptive, they've been helpful, they've been absolutely fantastic. So it was a nice change to not have to stress and not have to worry about that. Shauna, I'm going to go back to you with the same question. The information that we're looking for, has it always been there from your end, or is it only now starting to come back through the pandemic?
I think I would certainly agree with a lot of the points Siobhán has made there, in that a lot of the information we would think was there as well. And, you know, there's a series of reasons why people are now accessing it, you know. But one thing I did specifically want to mention was the Ecollege Platform. So the Ecollege Platform is a completely online learning system. It's actually been around for 30 years, which I find actually hard to believe, but it has been there for 30 years. And it probably would have been attracting maybe about 10,000 participants a year. But this year, Solas decided to invest more in it, to build it, you know, and to actually improve the access so that it was temporarily made available for everyone, regardless of what their backgrounds were, whereas before it would have been maybe seen more as a support intervention, and registrations for that have just flown. So albeit that we see, same as what Siobhán is saying, a lot more interaction with all of our digital media, with all even the Education and Training Board websites that people are looking at, our main website to fetch courses. But we have, I suppose, taken steps to actually improve and strengthen platforms like Ecollege, and people are attracted to that, and that's good to see, actually.
Funnily enough, I was on Ecollege yesterday looking up, because I had said that I wanted to upskill and look at different courses that I could do online, because like everybody else in the world, my own career has taken a nosedive in the last year. And just to remind us of that website, is it ecollege.ie? Am I right in saying?
Ecollege.ie, yes. And one of my slides actually will sort of showcase it there. But yes, ecollege.ie.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you so much for answering those questions. We will have more questions for our panel after their presentations, but for now, I'm going to hand you over to Siobhán Lawlor.
Thank you very much. So what I propose to do is to go through some of the offerings that we have for job seekers at the moment. I'm just going to bring you to the first slide, and this is basically the main event. So what we have here are basically the various different pathways to employment that Intro can offer job seekers. And an awful lot of these are available to people who are in receipt of PUP at the moment also. Some of them are also available to people in relation to disability allowance or one-parent family payments. So in terms of activation support, this is where there is a case officer assigned to you, and we actually engage with you in terms of pathway, what you're proposing to do. So we have case officers around the country. Every Intro centre has them, and then we have also a central hub that I have as well. Then added to that, we have the local employment services. There's the Uber sign that you might see somewhere as part of the local development companies. They have jobs clubs, and they offer some very good CV workshops and skills development. And we have Job Path, who are contracted to us, and employability. So all of us work together as part of the Intro service. Some of it is delivered by ourselves directly, and some of it is delivered through contracted services. And all of them are available to the clients, to job seekers, to PUP recipients, and it's also available to people on a walk-in basis. Now, obviously, with the lockdown, we have, as I said, some issues in relation to social distancing, and we also have to service all of the payments issues. But there are a core group of people who are still working on Intro services in terms of activation support. So those services are still open. You can send an email to your local Intro centre, and they can make an appointment for you, and somebody will give you a call back. So Shauna spoke about the fact that we work very closely with each other. So on Shauna's side, and also with the Higher Education Authority, there are an awful lot of courses that are available to job seekers generally. So for us, what we do in Intro is if somebody's in one of our clients, that we support them in relation to education and training. So rather than saying, oh, you're on job seekers, you have to go and get a job, we recognize that education and training is a very, very important stepping stone in terms of building up new capacity, moving to pivot your career, and potentially also moving into a different sector. So this is what we do in providing back to education support allowance at both second level and third level. That's part of the back to education allowance, so that if you are approved for this, you continue to get your job seeker payment and you can go and do the course. Springboard is another program which is in universities, and they are again, this is part of Shauna's area, but what happens is if somebody is supported on Springboard, well, then we'll continue to pay them on their job seekers. And the other thing, which is also part of Shauna's area, the Department of Further and Higher Education, is SkillsNet. And we work with them in terms of targeted areas. They work on a sectoral basis. So we've been working with them in terms of healthcare training. So we do referrals for them. Then separately, what we do is referrals for job seekers. So they go directly into courses at the, and then when they are on those courses, they can get their training allowance. And their training allowance is basically the equivalent rate at which they would be on job seekers. So if it is that you did your Leaving Cert, which is level 5, and you want to do a level 6 or level 7 in the Education Training Board, or you want to do a level 8, 7 or 8 in one of the universities, well then we can assist in all of those referrals and in terms of income support for that. And then the other thing that we do is sometimes there are some training programs that need to be where people do mini programs, and they might not be further education. It might be sector specific, or it could be like a pre-apprenticeship program. So some of the DITs do this a program which is, you might not know what apprenticeship program you want to go into, and they do these tasters, and we support clients to go onto that. Or I know JP Morgan work with Ballymun Job Centre in terms of providing training, skills training and workplace training, and we support clients in relation to that. So it's specifically approved training that we do in relation to that. So then we also do supported training. So these are potentially supported, directed towards long-term unemployed, so people who are more distant from the labour force for a period, and that's community employment, the TOOS system, the Rural Social Scheme, and other approved programmes. So at the moment, I think there's about 18,000 people on community employment around the country, and there again they've been invaluable to us during the lockdown in terms of a lot of them are doing Meals on Wheels, some of them are doing healthcare provision, things like that. So they're very good training areas for people who, I think it's 19.5 hours, and you get your social welfare payment plus a top up in relation to it, and you're employed within the community employment for a period of a year, and it can be extended up to 3 years. Then the other thing is a training support grant, so that if it is that the training that you want, it has to be paid for. It might be forklift or safe pass or something like that, and there's a cost associated with it. Well, then we can approve you for that payment, and we can give you the money upfront to be able to pay for that. Actually, that was one of the things that was in relation to licenses for security officers and things like that. So that's in terms of supported training. In terms of placements then, for people who are under 25, we know that we have a higher rate of unemployment for people who are under 25 than we do for the general population of unemployed people. So our aim is to focus on supporting people who are young, because you want them to be able to create a career for themselves, to be able to start a life of self-sufficiency for themselves, and to be able to develop their own opportunities, to live a life for themselves, so as to create great career paths for themselves. So to do that, we have the Youth Employment Support Scheme, and that has been running now for about 2 years. And what that is it's a training program with a host organisation, and they work 24 hours a week. They get €229 a week for that, and then they work with those hosts, who give them training, who give them mentoring, who help them in their development, and who tries to grow up that opportunity for them to be able to move into employment thereafter. In terms of employability, that is specifically for people with disabilities, and people would be referred from Intro, and what we do is employability work with them. They find placements for them, and they try to get them in with host organisations to work with them. And if somebody is taking on somebody with a disability, well, there are supports to the employer in relation to that, and there are very generous means allowances for people who are still in receipt of DA. There is a new scheme that I'm working on at the moment. Shauna will be aware of this, and it was part of the July job stimulus, and it is going to be a new work placement. We had hoped to go live actually this week, but we had to put it back because obviously the economy isn't opening. So hopefully in March we'll be launching this, and it'll be available to everybody. It won't be simply for the under 25s, it'll be available for everybody as a work placement scheme. So I know, Paul, you mentioned about the fact that you're looking at your own opportunities. One of the things that we have is a back to work enterprise allowance, so that if somebody is in receipt of job seekers, they have an idea for a business opportunity, well, then we can help them in relation to maintaining their income support for a period as they develop the business, basically. So we work through SIDECAP and the enterprise officers in SIDECAP, which again would be part of the local development network, and they help job seekers to build business plans to see, is it actually viable? Is this actually going to work? Am I going to be able to make a living out of it? And if they think that there's a viable business plan, it comes back to the case officer for approval. And if we think that, yes, there is a good chance here that people will be able to support themselves, well, then we support them on their job seekers for 2 years at a reduced rate, so as to help them to build up their business and to make sure that they have food on the table, that they can pay their bills while they're building up their business. And then finally, I suppose the self-directed job search, and an awful lot of people do this. For us in the department, we have jobsireland.ie, and you spoke there, Paul, about looking for training and things like that. We've just gone live yesterday with a sector-specific training options, which are available through FET and the Solas and ETBs, through SkillsNet, the Health and Safety Authority, all of these. And they're all online, they're all available, and you can just see the sector that you're interested in and the programs that might be useful to you. Then separately, we finally have Eurays, so that if you think that you want to go abroad to work, well, we are networked with all of our public employment agencies around Europe, and the jobs that are available here are visible to Europe, and the jobs that are available in Europe are visible through Eurays to people here in Ireland. So actually we have a very big event running online at the moment on that website, and it is for healthcare, and we have, I think it was about 1,200 jobs that are available at the moment: nurses, pharmacists, the social care workers, healthcare assistants, activity coordinators. So there's some really, really good jobs that are there. So just because the fact that the economy has gone into a bit of a lull doesn't mean that there aren't good jobs available at the moment. So I'm going to can I ask you to flip forward to the next slide? Great, thanks very much. So the other thing that we do is that we have online a benefits of work estimator, so that when you want to see, well, is it actually worth my while going back to work? Well, then you can put in what your earnings would be, what your terms and conditions would be, what payment you're on at the moment, and it'll do a kind of a calculation for you as to what your income would be if you go back to work. The other thing then is the working family payment, so that if you have a family and you're going to be starting in work, but you have a low enough income and you have a number of children, well, then we will supplement your income. And that is the working family payment. We also do the continued child payment, where if you have you continue to get your increase for your children over a period of a year or 2 years, and so that there again, it eases that transition back to work, because obviously your employer doesn't pay you on the basis of how many children you have, but obviously the more children you have, the more costly it is to run a family, to run a household. If somebody is working part-time or casual, we have income support schemes to support that, so that you maybe sign off for the days that you're not working, or if it is that you work a regular 3 days a week, that you can sign on for the other days, and that comes to you routinely. Then in terms of the schemes that you're on, what can happen is that there are means disregards. So if you start working and you continue to claim on a payment, you might still be entitled to a lower rate of income by having these means disregards. So just because you're going back to work doesn't mean that you don't get some income from social welfare. And then what can happen is some of the times people can be very nervous about losing a medical card or losing their rent supplement or things like that, and that's why I haven't mentioned it here, but the HAP. So we link in with HAP in relation to the housing support, and then you can continue to get your medical card for a period if you go back to work as well. So the whole aim is to try to ensure that we provide as seamless a progression back into employment, and that people don't feel that there's barriers to moving back into employment. Then obviously there are some incentives for employers to take people on as well. So I'll ask you to do the next slide, please. So I've just included here some of the contacts in terms of my welfare, how to make a claim online, how to contact in terms of the income support helpline for PUP, how to access Intro, how to get the contacts for those, and then with Jobs Ireland, the platform that we have for recruitment at the moment as well. So there are some of the supports that we have. If there are any issues or queries that you have, I'm happy to take any queries. Obviously, as I said, we work hand in glove with Solas, with the ETBs, with the local enterprise offices, and the whole aim is to create an ecosystem around the economy, around learning, around growing business, so that we're here to support you as a cohesive whole for job seekers. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Siobhán. I just want to touch on some things you said there. The under 25 has a much higher rate of unemployment. Is there any indication as to why? Is that coming from school, or is that just across the board, or have you any insight into that?
I think the thing is that with the under 25s, that is the same across Europe. So actually our level of under 25 unemployment is actually lower than in some other countries. So part of it is the fact of the no skills, no job, no job, no skills. So some people can be, if you don't have something down in your CV in relation to I worked here, or I did that, or I was doing part-time work there, or I have training in that, it's very hard to land a job if you haven't got experience or if you haven't got relevant training. So the aim is to try to provide that level of training and to provide that level of support to young people. But it's also sometimes, I mean, we see it with people leaving school. You think you want to do something, you don't know if you want to do something, and we end up not doing anything. And we can all be guilty of that. And so the aim is to try to support people to develop their own career, to develop an understanding of what their strengths are, of what they can bring to a job and what they can take from a job, and to give them that work experience. And I think one of the really important things that's available with the Youth Employment Support Scheme is that the idea of a mentor, so that you're going into a job not just to do some work for a certain number of hours, but there's actually somebody at your side who's there to support you, to mind you. I was talking to one employer at one stage, and there was a great guy who had been working with him who said, like, he was in his bedroom playing games in a darkened room for so many times, for so many months. And he said he actually just wasn't making the decision to do something. Although everybody around him was saying, you need to, you need to, you need to. So he started in this place, and the employer in that instance said that, he said, it's about an arm around, not a handout. And I thought it was a beautiful way of putting it, that, you know, the Youth Employment Support Scheme is about helping. It's, some businesses do it from the point of view of corporate social responsibility, but it is about learning yourself what you have in terms of your own capacity. because if we haven't worked before, we might not believe that we have capacity. Or if we have had a bad experience in work or in education or training, and you say, oh, well, I can't do that, or, well, my literacy skills aren't that good, or I can't count. So all of those things stand in our way of actually progressing into a career, launching our own career. And this is why the Youth Employment Support Scheme is there, but it's also, I'm not sure if Shauna is going to mention it, but we have the National Adult Literacy Agency, and they work through the education and training boards as well. So that the aim is to try to build literacy as well, because not everybody is completely confident in terms of their levels of literacy or numeracy or even digital literacy. So the aim is to try to provide opportunities for people to learn that in a safe environment where their income is supported and so as to grow their capacity.
I think you touched on the youth employment scheme there, and I think it's great because I think more so from working with kids and working with teenagers myself, I think more so to do with it is the fear of being told no and the fear of the failure in a workplace, because maybe a lot of the time people are suffering from that in their school life, whereas they might not be academic, but they could get out and work really, really hard, which is, I left school at 16 and it was instilled into me to work really, really hard from that age. So I think that that's something that would really be beneficial for people to look up, is that youth employment scheme. I have so much more questions. I could talk to you all day. I'm going to pass over to Shauna now. Shauna and Siobhán, you work together. I think before we went live, you said you work hand in glove together. Shauna, maybe you could touch on that. I think you are going to touch on that in your presentation.
I am indeed, and thank you so much for that, Paul. I mean, I think it's very important that we make that distinction that, you know, all of us as state agencies are here to support the state. You know, we're here to support citizens, and we do that through many of the aspects that Siobhán has highlighted. There are 3 different programs, but a key part of that, I suppose, is making sure that all of those potential benefits and welfare payments and much needed supports that are being offered there, that Siobhán has highlighted, do also play a part in helping people to progress with education and training. And we know that that can be perhaps, you know, maybe some of the barriers, you know, if people feel that maybe they're not going to be able to hold on to whatever their welfare entitlement is. And there are some aspects of that probably we still need to work through. But I suppose the main thing to say is that further education and training, just like what we've heard from how Siobhán has highlighted, is there for everyone. It is available to everyone across the country. It has no upper age limit whatsoever. And in fact, we do some work on looking at our data, and we know there are people who are aged over 100 who participate in further education and training, quite a number of them. And also you can start from quite early. And just to pick up on the point of the youth unemployment, for an apprenticeship, for example, you can start that at age 16. And in fact, the population that we have across apprenticeship, it is primarily younger people, the average age being around by 21. I mean, that is changing as we've developed apprenticeship over the last number of years, but it is something that is an option for a young person at a very young age to actually not just start in education, but actually start to be in employment as well. That's one area. And Youth Reach, which is another important scheme that we have, certainly for maybe young people who have left school early, it's an option as well. So there are lots of initiatives, and I think the point about us working together is that we're always very conscious of that connection, because an individual may go to the Intreo office first. And they might actually also meet the education and training board there, because sometimes that happens, you know, where they're so closely connected on a local level. And it may be the Intreo office that says, well, actually, you would qualify for doing this course or that course. Why don't you talk to the ETB? Or it can happen in reverse as well. So an individual, maybe through the guidance service, and all of the education and training boards have free guidance services as well. They might suggest that actually, if you do this course, you know, we would need to know that you're protected, and there's a way back. So it's very, very much connected, so that everyone is being offered the opportunity for further education and training, and also that, if there is an aspect there that links to welfare, that's also supported. So that's probably what I would say is the way forward for us.
Great.
Well, or do you want to ask me something about that, Paul?
You go on ahead. You take the floor.
Okay. So I'll just wait till the slide comes up. I mean, what better way to tell you about further education and training than to highlight some of the learners that we have in the system at the moment. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it, but there are over 200,000 individuals every year choosing to do something in further education and training. It's in your local community. If you don't know it's there, I can tell you it is there. But this is one of our main websites, and I would encourage everyone to have a look at this. It is simply called thisisfet.ie. So FET being further education and training. So I just want to highlight some of the people and some of the stories that we have on the site at the moment here. So that very, very important picture we see there of a route into nursing. I mean, so important at the moment, it's critical really. And this story is really about a young lady called Amy, and she tells her story in this section about how she didn't really do as well as she thought she was going to do through her Leaving Cert, and she really wanted to progress to nursing through higher education, and it didn't work out for her. But she actually found a way to actually start her nursing through a further education course, and it was through the course. I love the way she tells the story on our site. It wasn't just that it gave her the pathway into higher education, which she was successful in achieving. It also gave her the confidence and maybe a chance to, get to know the subject, the occupation a little bit, get used to what it was like to be in college before she progressed. And I think that's a lovely example there. You see this beautiful castle. This almost like a castle, So this is Ormond College. Some of you might know it in Kilkenny. I mean, what an amazing place to go to college in. I always be sometimes amazed at the different locations that we have and how they have sprung up and developed, over the years. And I think, that's a big bonus. And the community side of further education and training is only getting stronger as all of those local links develop. I mean, this particular area, has such an exciting array of courses, everything from animation to media to all kinds of local cultural aspects that are added into that one. And then some of you may know Al Higgins here, who's pictured. He's quite a famous photographer. Again, he followed the further education and training route, and I think it would be hard pressed to go in many different locations without finding maybe some of his artwork. It's all around the country. And again, he talks about how he ended up on a pathway to further education and training, really following his passion. And that's something that we hear all the time from the learners. And then the lady look at this beautiful beach, like this, even in the situation we're in, the outside is still there for many of us and those of us who are lucky enough to be at the beach. But this is a story about a lady called Fran Duffy and how she actually left her career due to the recession at the time. So, it's good to remember, that, okay, we've never been where we are right now, but we have been in crisis times before. And this lady worked, I think, for about 15 years in an office, doing administration and finance. And she followed her dream, and now she is a surf instructor, and she works on the beach actually as a beach lifeguard. So what a change in career that you can actually achieve. Now I'm going to talk about some of these other aspects here as well. So I suppose this is the place where if you want to think about maybe what you could be doing at the moment, we would suggest that you visit this other site. This is our main site for all further education and training provision. It's fetchcourses.ie. And actually what you've seen in the last slide was we actually have a guide to how you can navigate the site, how you can register, how you can search for the course that you might like to do. And it's relatively straightforward. We've been working on this a lot, even in the last year, when we knew a lot of people were maybe looking for different types of courses for different reasons. But this is where you'll find what's actually available at the moment. So I would certainly suggest that you have a look at fetchcourses.ie. I mentioned briefly the Ecollege provision, which this is the one that we put more support and infrastructure into, particularly in the last year. And I believe at this moment in time, maybe 30,000 odd individuals have actually maybe gone onto the site and seen something that they like to do. And it's quite wide in what it offers. It has project management. It has very specific digital skills, and it seems to be attracting lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds. And I suppose the main thing to say as well, apart from the accessibility to further education and training, is that it's all free. There is, when it comes to the post-leaving cert course, there is a registration fee that's there, but this is state-funded training. And maybe, one of the aspects we touched on there about the youth unemployment, it is linked to maybe a wider sort of, it's still a challenge in some ways of how we get the story of further education and training out there across the country. And maybe not enough people know about the options that are available at the moment. And certainly I think we can probably build on the information that young people get in school as they're maybe getting close to the CAO system, which, many of you will be aware of. Now, we're working all the time, and the This Is FET campaign and the website is all about raising awareness. We are blessed in the minister we have at the moment, Minister Harris, who takes every opportunity really to really sell the benefits of what further education can offer people. And I'm going to touch on that again in a moment. But just before, I just wanted to mention apprenticeship as well. Again, we have a national website, which is just simply apprenticeship.ie. And you can go on this website, find out about the over 50 apprenticeships that are available, and the different ways in how you can access those. There's lots out there. I mean, we're obviously in a particular moment in time where we are still in level 5 restrictions. We are in a place where the centres and most of the provision is only online at the moment, so we are conscious of that. But we are looking to the future, and we're looking at all the different ways and how we can transform how we reach learners and how we can offer provision. But apprenticeship is definitely another aspect to look at. And then just to finish, really, and I wanted to come back to the minister as well at this point to mention two things in particular. The minister has launched a brand new sort of campaign, which is called The Right Course, and there is a link to that on the national government website, and it highlights all of the provision right across the country, and upskilling and reskilling, all of the supports that are available. And it's it's such a good idea. It's only just gone live, and I think it's really helping people navigate the system. I mean, we're very active on social media kind of as a sector, and you'll see that we talk about the This Is FET, and also one campaign that we worked on with one of our partner organisations called Aintus is all about getting the voice of the learner, which is hugely important to us. And there was a document launched just at the end of last year that showcases 10 different learners telling their stories of why they chose further education and training. And I would strongly recommend to connect with that one as well, for nothing else but to inspire you. And my final point, just to end, is that regardless of what is happening in the world at the moment, there was a huge success, I suppose, for all of us nationally last year, in that we were able to launch the brand new national strategy for further education and training. And it's actually called Transforming Learning, the Future Fit. And I think this is, a brilliant opportunity for us to be able to tell you a little bit about that campaign. But essentially, over the next 4 or 5 years up to 2024, we have a very ambitious strategy where we want to be more diverse. We want to reach more learners. We want to ensure there are more pathways, and we want to really work on how we get the message out there and how we can be as inclusive as possible. And so that is all something that, for us to make the system better, for us to know what works, for the areas we need to improve, and we know there are areas we need to improve, and we would love to hear from you on that. And that's all from me.
Thank you, Shauna. Just to touch on some things, we've only about 7 minutes left, so I kind of want to get all the questions that I can as possible. Your FETcourses.ie and the Ecollege.ie courses you spoke about there, did I hear you say they're all free? And is there an age limit between them? As in, so, from youth to old, can anybody, because like I said to you earlier on, I had jumped on Ecollege to see kind of what I could do, and I couldn't register, so I was going to ask you today how you go about registering that. But A, are they expensive, or you did say free? And B, is there an age limit to those sites?
So the courses are free. The only one where there is a cost attached is there is a registration fee for post-leaving cert. And the difference, I suppose, just to flag, is apprenticeship, where apprenticeship is employment. So it's slightly different, so you become an employee. But no, the courses are free. In relation to the age, there is no upper age limit. So, you can be, I said, we have learners who are coming in over 80, over 90, over 100, and in a lot of cases, you do have to be over 18. So Ecollege, for example, you have to be over 18, but there are some provisions such as apprenticeship, youth reach, that is younger than that. And in your relation to your query on Ecollege, I can pick up with you after, but hopefully you were able to get some sort of online expression of interest form. And if not, we'll look into that for you.
And just from a point of view, you said it a couple of times in your presentation and before, where people have been inspired to move on to careers that were a passion for them before the pandemic. What about the other way around? What about the people who were already working for their passion and have now had to move into a different side of things to basically make money and to continue to live? I know that's a bit of a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. What would your advice be to I suppose, to uplift people into kind of saying, look, it's for a period of time, or if it's going to be long term?
Yeah, I suppose I take the view that we're all lifelong learners, we're all on a journey. And yes, you're right, there is so much disruption, because of everything that has happened across the country. And, I can't give you a definitive answer as to, we do see a set of people in this occupation who are moving, maybe towards this. But what we do see is a lot of activity in relation to looking at courses. And okay, maybe you've already found your dream job and, you're in your passion, but, maybe there are other things to explore that are about upskilling, for what your next, career might be. It might be there's opportunities to even upskill in the area that you already love. I think, I do take that point that we're all, I run that sort of principle myself, that we're lifelong learners. Like in the last, few months, I decided to go back to my Irish, for example, and I spent Saturday afternoons for 2 hours on an online Irish class. And if I ask myself honestly, would I have done that if the times weren't the way they were? The answer probably is no. So I suppose there's a number of things, look to see, is there something you did always really want to do? Or maybe is it something that you feel is a skill you might need for the future, such as in the area of digital skills, which we know many of us probably, still need to work on as we go.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I did with the Ecollege. I was looking for something that could upskill within my area of expertise. I'm going to invite both Shauna and Siobhán back into the conversation now, if that's okay. Thank you so much for those presentations. We do have a question, and it was something that I wanted to touch on. Dave Finn asks, really interesting to see the available options out there. Wondering if there are any specifically inclusive strategies for example, to target LGBT students who may have an aversion to further learning due to a bad school experience, but to enlighten them that not all learning experiences are the same. And it was a question that I wanted to touch upon as well, even with regards to our trans and non-binary section to our community. Is there easier ways to fall into employment and fall into education without having that fear after maybe the aversion of a school experience? Siobhán, sorry.
I think the thing is, in relation to previous experiences, we need to just be conscious of the fact that I think sometimes it can be difficult in a workplace if you feel different. And I think that this is where a lot of the employers need to take responsibility, but they also have duties. They have duties to the employee in relation to it. So that we have the Equal Status Act, we have the Workplace Equality Act, and then we also have a means of remedying them between the WRC and the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. So I think that the infrastructure is there. But I think the thing is that in terms of, obviously you don't want to go there. If you've had a bad experience, it's that fear of, oh, I'm going to be rejected again, or that's going to be too hard for me. And that's where I think you just need to either talk to adult guidance within further education, or talk to a case officer to try to find out, well, what is actually going to be a safe place for me to work? Because we all need a safe place to work. And like I have to say, actually, I'll speak for the civil service. The civil service is a very, very safe place to work. We have education, diversity and inclusion policies. We have harassment and dignity at work policies. We have lots of transformation. We have tons of training. It's a very supportive environment, and lifelong learning is absolutely supported. There's also remedies, so that if you feel that you were called out wrong, or somebody was being, disrespectful or things like that, there are remedies for you without having to go down an official route. So I would say, if people are concerned, because a lot of people think that public service or the civil service is not for me. I remember somebody on a plane saying, well, you wouldn't want people like me there. And you said, but we are all people like me. And you and everything, because we are a society, and the society needs to serve the society that it serves. Like, it needs to reflect that society. So I would say that you just choose wisely, and you protect yourself to some extent, but you choose your employer carefully. But don't stand in your own way in terms of taking the plunge, because sometimes you learn more about yourself when you do take the plunge. And you say, well, that was tough. And actually, that's one of the things in relation to the new work placement program that we're going to be doing, is about that career progression and self-development and self-learning. What have I learned about myself that I didn't know, or that I was afraid of, or that was a challenge to me? That's not a challenge or anything like that now. So they're very important things. But support and assistance is there.
Great. We've actually just about run out of time now, so I just want to say thank you so much to Siobhán, and thank you so much to Shauna. And Siobhán, you said at the very, very start of this talk, invest in your own learning and not stand in your own way. Can I just get from the both of you, what do you think is the best bit of advice that you've learned or you've been given from the start of childhood up to your career now? Do you have a bit of advice that maybe inspire some of our viewers today? Siobhán, you first, please.
I love when I get questions like this, because it really makes me dig deep. I suppose I'll go back to what my mother used to say to me. She used to say to all of us, there's only one of you and you deserve the best. Don't settle for anything less. But equally, don't stand in your own way. And before we finish, can I just say a shout out to our signers who did a fantastic job. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. And Shauna, I'm going to pass to you as well for the final comment as well on your bit of inspiring words that may have been given to you over the years.
I would say the best advice that I ever got was, if you really feel in your heart that this is the right pathway for you, don't be afraid to take a risk.
Absolutely fantastic. And Siobhán and Shauna, we can find you across social media, and we can find you through your relevant channels. I just want to say a massive thank you, Siobhán Lawlor and Shauna Dunlop, for the module today. And enjoy the rest of the Pride Work Diversity event. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Paul Ryder, and Chris, back at the Dublin Pride office, it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you also, Siobhán and Shauna, for this really nice module about the supports and training opportunities that are available. Up next, we have our last module of our Pride at Work conference. It's with our iPride Indeed sponsor, and it's about career coaching with Pride. So they will be talking to you about the just about the career design, about interviewing skills, and basically about everything you need to know to get started. So I'm going to hand over now to the Indeed iPride team. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.